temperatures holding up, perhaps some pockets of frost as we head through the latter part of the night towards the southeast. And here's your outlook as we head into Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. Mild for most, with some rain, colder in the north.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Join me, Mark White, here on GB News. For more than 2 decades, I've been at the sharp end of reporting crime and security at home and abroad. From the scourge of terrorism to the fight against violent crime and the deepening small boats crisis in the Channel. They're issues you rightly care about, and so do I. As GB News Home and Security Editor, my focus will be on the stories that matter to you.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Hello and welcome to The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood. Lots coming up today. We've got the latest on COVID curbs, of course, rather than the lack of them, perhaps. We're talking about treating COVID at home to help hospitals and asking what Liz Truss's new Brexit move means for Northern Ireland and indeed her leadership hopes. Plus, David Amos's murder trial gets underway today. All of that and so much more. But first, here's your news.
Good afternoon, I'm Rosie Wright. Let's get you up to date at 12 o'clock. New COVID restrictions in England are unlikely to be introduced before Christmas, but the Prime Minister says the government won't rule out further action. Boris Johnson says the data is being monitored hourly and the arguments for stricter guidance are very finely balanced. In Wales, sporting events are going to be played behind closed doors from the 26th of December. Meanwhile, Scotland's First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, is going to give an update this afternoon after an increase in cases there. The former chief medical officer at Bupa told GB News measures in England must be brought in to protect the NHS.
We already now have one of the highest, in fact, it's over 100,000 cases a day now, and it's going up and up. And I feel that if we don't bring in restrictions, as many other countries in Europe are doing, either we're not going to bring them in before Christmas. People want Christmas saved, but I think immediately after we will have to, or the NHS will just not be able to cope, and we will be back where we were with real problems.
Rail operators are running reduced timetables in the run-up to Christmas because of coronavirus-related staff shortages. Dozens of train journeys have been cancelled by cross-country every day this week. Avanti West Coast has removed all peak ticket restrictions over Christmas to help spread demand. There's a reduced service as well across Southern, Thameslink and Great Northern Network until the end of the day on Christmas Eve. Greater Anglia have cancelled a number of trains, and Northern Rail and ScotRail are all running amended timetables. The Trans-Pennine Express is warning of short-notice cancellations over the next fortnight. The World Health Organization is urging leaders and individuals to make difficult decisions now, declaring that 2022 must be the year the pandemic ends. The Director General is warning that the Omicron variant is spreading significantly faster than the Delta strain. It's already been identified in 89 countries across the world. He's also urged caution over the festive period, saying an event cancelled is better than a life cancelled.
2022 must be the year we end the pandemic. But it must also be the year that all countries invest in preventing a future disaster on this scale. In the year ahead, WHO is committed to doing everything in our power to end the pandemic and to beginning a new era in global health.
President Joe Biden has deployed 1,000 military personnel to support hospitals in the US as COVID admissions rise. The Omicron variant is now the dominant strain in the country, accounting for 73% of new infections. The national rate suggests that more than 650,000 cases of Omicron occurred in the last week. The White House press secretary has reiterated the importance of being vaccinated.
For those who choose to remain unvaccinated, he'll issue a stark warning and make clear unvaccinated individuals will continue to drive hospitalizations and deaths. That is not trying to scare people, or maybe it is trying to make clear to people in the country what the risks are here of not being vaccinated.
Now, in other news, the government has announced £316 million to support homeless people and those at risk of losing their homes. Well, the move follows a warning from the charity Shelter that more than 274,000 people are homeless in England on any given night. The Homelessness Prevention Grant will help people find a new home, get help with evictions or move into temporary accommodation. The government has pledged more than £2 billion in funding over the next 3 years to tackle the issue. Dubai's ruler has been ordered to pay £554 million to settle a custody battle with his ex-wife over their 2 children. He's going to have to pay the largest sum to ever be granted by a UK court in such a case. The High Court judge ruled the bulk of the payout is for the children's education and lifetime security and to address the grave risk posed to them by their father. £251 million will be paid to his ex-wife for the upkeep of her British mansions and for the future security. Now, a 326-million-year-old fossil of a giant millipede has been found in Northumberland. Found by fluke, the fossil was discovered after a section of cliff fell onto the shore. Experts say giant millipedes as long as a car and weighing 50 kilograms were once roaming in the north of England. That's all your news for now. I'll be back to update you in half an hour. Right now, let's go to the briefing with Tom Harwood.
Happy Christmas and welcome to the briefing. Coming up on this hour, well, your plans for Christmas Day are probably safe, but after Christmas Day, who knows? We'll have the latest on COVID curbs, and I'll be asking The Sun on Sunday's political editor whether the Prime Minister has lost his authority. Now, the NHS is on a war footing, so it says, and plans to treat 15% of COVID patients at home to relieve pressure on hospital beds. I'll be talking to Paul Bristow, chair or a member of the Health and Social Care Committee, all about that. And Foreign Secretary Liz Truss is now Brexit Minister too. I'll be asking her former special advisor what it means for Northern Ireland and Liz Truss's hopes of the top job. Can she make Prime Minister? And don't forget to give me your political briefing too. Send in your views and opinions on all the stories we're covering today by emailing gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews. Now, Boris Johnson told us yesterday he wouldn't hesitate to bring in further restrictions, but settled, for now, on apparent indecision. In the almost 3-hour cabinet marathon yesterday, most ministers were reportedly against changes to the rules before Christmas. But there is the spectre of post-Christmas restrictions. That has reared its ugly head again, and even the suggestion that next week Parliament might be recalled. Well, to go over all of this, I'm delighted to be joined in the studio by The Sun on Sunday's political editor, David Wooding. David, welcome to the programme. Is the Prime Minister a totally busted flush now, stuck between, on one hand, his scientific advisers and the other, rebels in his own party?
Well, it's without doubt he has been weakened by the events of the recent weeks, Partygate, that by-election reverse in North Shropshire, the rebellion by 100 MPs, and at the weekend, the resignation of his Brexit ally, Lord Frost, from the cabinet. Yes, he is a weakened man. However, it's always been the case, even from the day COVID began, 2 years ago nearly, where the Prime Minister has been doing a balancing act between the health lobby, who want the strongest lockdowns, and the business lobby, who want Britain opening up. I remember in The Sun on Sunday, it must have been about 18 months ago, we did a full write-through across 2 pages, and we had this picture of Boris Johnson walking a tightrope from the Big Ben clock tower across the Thames, and he had Chris Whitty sitting on one end of his balancing pole and Rishi Sunak on the other, which in a picture summed up the balancing act that he has to do. And he has got that again. The difference now, though, Tom, is that because of the rebellion by 100 MPs and because MPs are openly in revolt and talking about a leadership challenge, he is now being swayed a little bit more towards those who rebelled, who want lockdown restrictions not to be imposed. And of course, we saw that in the decision made, or the non-decision made yesterday.
So that bucket, that COVID recovery group bucket, for want of a better phrase, is a lot heavier now than the scientific bucket. It was interesting to me reading some reports that Rishi Sunak, someone who is often briefed in the press to be very against restrictions, didn't speak that much in the cabinet meeting yesterday. Is he trying to hold his cards close to his chest?
You see, this is the risk for all the cabinet, particularly those who are perhaps manoeuvring a little bit in case there is a leadership challenge. They want to be on the side of the MPs who all believe, a lot of the Tory MPs who have the big say, who believe that we should open up a lot more. But on the other hand, they don't want to be seen to be the person who is on the side of death and destruction if the worst case scenarios unfold. And we've got Michael Gove and now Sajid Javid, who was a little bit more gung-ho about opening up than his predecessor, Matt Hancock, are both being a bit cautious. Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss, the two front runners to be the next leader, are openly on the side of made it known, certainly, that they're on side of keeping things a little bit more relaxed. But of course, Boris Johnson is torn here, and perhaps he is being swayed by the overwhelming view of his party at the moment.
Now, we might be getting a little bit ahead of ourselves here, but looking at the dynamics of any future leadership election, it's a very difficult task for any potential challengers to balance the views of the parliamentary party versus the views of the country. Looking at a number of opinion surveys, Conservative voters seem to actually be slightly more in favour of restrictions, whereas Conservative members and certainly MPs are amongst the most anti-restriction, whereas Labour Party voters to some extent seem to be more anti-restriction, whereas Labour Party MPs and members more pro-restriction. It seems like there's a sort of a bait and switch that almost needs to occur for anyone that wants to successfully win a leadership election, but then win the country afterwards.
Yes, it is a very, very difficult picture. It's very similar to Brexit, Tom. You know, we have the hardline Remainers who wanted us to go back into Europe even when the referendum was won, and even when Brexit has been delivered. And then you get the hardline Brexiteers who just want us to break all ties with the EU. And then in the middle, you had a lot of people who felt, well, we voted this way, we should try and come to some kind of deal to get out. You've got the same with COVID. There are some people who just want to lock down, and many of them are a little bit scared and spooked by the doomsday predictions. Others, perhaps on furlough, working in unpleasant jobs, quite like the idea of staying at home on 80% of salary and not having to go in. So those people, and then on the other hand, there's people who've got businesses to run and people who just want to get on with their lives, and young people who don't see why they should be restricted in what they do. In the middle again, you get the sensible people who wear masks on trains, stick to the rules, sanitise, but get on with their lives. But it's difficult for a Prime Minister to view where popularity is in this. The only answer really is to try and look at the data and work out what the right thing to do is, and that is really where the Prime Minister's head should be focused. But it's very difficult when you've got a backdrop of chaos behind you over the recent weeks. You know that the skids are under you. And everybody's pulling you from each side. It's a very, very difficult task.
And I suppose even more difficult, given that this is such a new variant, that in many ways the data is not yet in. It's hard to make those decisions based on guesswork. But I'm interested in your Brexit analogy there. There was a YouGov poll out today that showed that Boris Johnson currently is less popular in the country than even Prince Andrew, which really took me aback a little bit. But it reminds me of that time when Theresa May was there, trying to stand in the middle between leave and remain. You had all the people who wanted to leave the European Union disliking her deal because it kept us in so many parts of the European Union, and everyone who wanted to remain disliking her deal because ostensibly it legally took us out of the European Union. Is Boris Johnson now in the same trap? People who want restrictions think he isn't doing enough, and people who don't want restrictions think he is too aligned with the pro-restriction lobby.
That's exactly right, Tom. I'd say that Boris Johnson is now being hoisted by a similar petard to the one which hoisted Theresa May. He's torn in the middle here, and whichever way he turns, he can't win. I mean, you look at the Labour Party, who are in the same boat. What are you going to do, Keir Starmer? He doesn't really have an answer. All he can do is stand there and shout, Boris Johnson's making no decision. He's got this all wrong. He's putting lives at risk. He's got to act now. If he was in that position, he wouldn't know what to do either. And people say to him, well, what would you do? And his answer is quite simple. Well, I haven't got all the data. I can't tell you.
I suppose Boris Johnson could equally say he doesn't have all the data because the data doesn't exist.
No, it doesn't.
But I suppose here the question is this something that is going to save Boris Johnson in the end? Is the position of being Prime Minister at this moment in time a bit of a poisoned chalice? Would all of these challengers who are sort of saying, oh, I'd be all things to all people, actually not quite want to get into that hot seat at this particular moment in time because they'd end up having to disappoint some people somewhere?
That's right. I mean, Theresa May inherited the crown at a bad time. Boris, unknown, was hit by a bus that within a few months of taking charge. I think for them, they'd say, well, why do we want it now? But of course, when you want to be Prime Minister, you've got to strike when the chance is there. The other difficulty is that the people who want to topple him, the backbenchers who are getting increasingly restless, they need to unite behind a single figure, and they can't do that quite yet. You've got a massive split within parliamentary party. You know, there's still the Remainers who might want Jeremy Hunt, and you've got others the Brexiteers who are now turning against Boris, and who do they want? I mean, there's so many choices, and it could be somebody who's not even in the cabinet at the moment, if it comes to that. Until they can get their heads together and decide who they want to unite behind, then it's going to be very difficult to mount a challenge.
That's an interesting prospect. I wonder if we look at the entire political situation as it exists right now. We are 2 years into this government. It's just been over 2 years since that December election in 2019. Are we getting a little bit ahead of ourselves now? It's pretty usual for a mid-term government to be behind in the polls. I remember people talking a little bit about David Cameron's leadership in 2012, 2013. Is this sort of normal and cyclical? Or is this something quite different? Are we now entering the same sort of period that we saw when Theresa May had those 100-strong rebellions against her plans in Parliament? Which is it?
Yeah, I think what we've seen in the last few weeks, Tom, is something similar to the end of the John Major years, where week after week there was a sleaze allegation, there was another MP who was playing away from home, or another scandal about cash for questions. We're not seeing the same sort of problems here, but we're seeing bad decisions and damaging allegations about parties in Downing Street, or mistakes, rebellions, all that sort of stuff, which is giving a picture of chaos at the heart of government. Now, I think it's not terminal for Boris Johnson, but he does need to get a grip. And some people have said he needs to change the team, the party management. He needs people inside at number 10 who can say to him, hey, boss, don't do this, it will be a mistake. Or 6 months down the road, this is going to happen and going to hit us. We need to plan for this now. And there doesn't seem to be that sort of foresight going on. The other interesting thing, Tom, is Dominic Cummings, who left the government, we all remember him, was saying that Boris Johnson was like a shopping trolley who was all over the place and couldn't make a decision. When Lord Frost resigned on Saturday, he said he was unhappy with the direction of the government. So there's a clear conflict of criticism there. One saying he was all over the place and didn't know where he's going, and the other one saying he knows where he's going all right,
and
but he's going the wrong way.
Yeah.
So which is it?
We only have a few seconds left in this interview, but just if you had advice for Boris Johnson now in terms of winning back the confidence of his backbenchers, in terms of being able to present the idea that he has got a grip, what's the first thing he should do?
The first thing he should do is get an enforcer into number 10 who can run the party machine from number 10 and join back together the parliamentary party and the seat of government. He needs probably to shake up the whip's office so that he knows what's going on inside the parliamentary party, and then spend a bit of time getting to know his own MPs so that he can convince them that he's got their best interests at heart. But it's a long haul, and it's very difficult to do when you've got these chaotic things going on in the background which keeps taking your mind off the main issue. It's a hard slog, but it can be done.
Certainly a very, very difficult political time. But for now, David Wooding, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon on The Briefing on GB News. Well, coming up, we'll be talking about some other big stories. Liz Truss, one of those contenders to take the title of Prime Minister. She's just been given a promotion. All that after the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello there and welcome to your Tuesday forecast. Here are your headlines. Generally a lot of cloud today, a few showers lurking across the far north of Scotland, but we will see some brighter moments. High pressure still in charge just for Tuesday before things become a bit more mobile from the west through Wednesday and into the Christmas weekend. And what that means, outbreaks of rain, but for today it is mostly dry. Now we will see some holes in the cloud. West Wales, western parts of Scotland seeing perhaps even some sunshine and some brighter moments coming through further east as the cloud overturns. A keen breeze towards the West Country as well as Northern Ireland. Temperatures here around 7 or 8, but struggling further east, 4 to 6 degrees Celsius. Now through this evening and overnight, notice some cloud breaks towards the south, slowly moving their way northwards as well. So temperatures will plummet under starry skies, a fairly widespread frost away from Northern Ireland and the western periphery of Wales as well as the West Country. Temperatures holding up here, and certainly through the latter part of the night, thickening cloud for Northern Ireland will bring with it the onset of some patchy rain. Elsewhere, despite the fact it will be a frosty start to the day, it will be bright. Some sunshine, the sunshine turning hazy through the day as that cloud slowly thickens from the west. And I notice this rain moves up towards western parts of Scotland through the afternoon, and a wet day for Northern Ireland. Some showers then for the west of Wales through the latter part of the day. Elsewhere, it's a mostly dry end to Wednesday. Now through Wednesday evening and into the nighttime period, that rain continues its passage northwards. Hill snow will be an issue across the Scottish mountains, and you can see a few showers across the western side of Wales as well as England. Temperatures holding up, perhaps some pockets of frost as we head through the latter part of the night towards the southeast. And here's your outlook as we head into Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. Mild for most with some rain, colder in the north.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Join me, Gloria De Piero, Monday to Thursday at noon for The Briefing. We go to the parts of Parliament that you won't see elsewhere. Plus, there's exclusive interviews with MPs from all parties.
But quite often, they paper over the real truth. Why does a working class lad like you join the Tories?
That's a good question.
Don't miss it, Monday to Thursdays at noon on GB News.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Join us for Political Correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is Political Correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
You're watching GB News live across the UK, the world, and our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We're here for you. Don't forget to join our community by hitting the subscribe button.
And download the GB News app so you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you. Email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
Well, Omicron may be milder than previous variants. We'll find out for sure in the coming days. But it's so infectious that the government is worried about hospitals becoming overwhelmed. A smaller percentage of those infected if a smaller percentage of those infected end up going to hospital, that means little if a bigger percentage get infected in the first place at any one time. So now the NHS has announced it plans to treat 15% of COVID patients from home on what it's termed virtual wards to help free up hospital beds. Well, to discuss this, I'm delighted to be joined by Paul Bristow, member of the Health and Social Care Committee in Parliament and, of course, Conservative Member of Parliament for Peterborough. Welcome to the programme, Paul. First of all, this is good news, undoubtedly, that fewer people will have to end up going to hospital. How will it be carried out in practice?
Well, I think there are three things here with this story. I think the first thing is that the vast majority of people who contract COVID, of course, are at home and are treated at home. Now, they've obviously got milder disease, and you only end up... God. Hello?
Hi, Paul. Paul, we can still see you.
Stop.
Oh, no.
Calling me.
Oh, it appears we've got a little bit of a problem with mobile phones there. But it is a really interesting story, this one, of course, because as Paul was beginning to say there, most people are treated for COVID at home. For most people, this is a mild disease. But then for those for whom it isn't a mild disease, going to hospital can really stretch those services. In fact, if many people who contract COVID go to hospital, that can actually take away resources from the NHS that could go to other things, that could go to cancer care, for example. I think that many times people talk about treating COVID as if it isn't to the exclusion of other things. But if there's a big wave of COVID coming into our hospitals, that really damages lots of other health ailments as well. It's a serious point, and being able to treat people at home, being able to free up that hospital space could be incredibly important, could even be a bit of a game changer. But what is it exactly about this hospital care that is so necessary to be in hospital? What can be done at home? What are exactly those particular treatment? Let's bring Paul back in to try and answer some of those questions. Welcome back, Paul, I was just asking, what is it exactly about what can be done at home? What are the practical things that can be now done at home that perhaps couldn't be done beforehand?
Well, forgive me then, Tom. My wife called me halfway through the interview. But of course, look, lots of people are treated at home already, those with milder disease. And ultimately, you only end up going to hospital when you have more severe disease, when you require oxygen, for example. Now, there are also lots of people who have dialysis, for example. They have their treatment at home. There are lots of people who also have oxygen at home. So I think this is really exciting because, of course, the biggest strain, if you like, is, and the data we should all be watching, is the number of hospitalisations. We don't want the NHS to collapse. And I guess just a third point I would make as well. Lots of people do go to hospital with other conditions, but ultimately, because there are people there with COVID, with other infectious diseases, if you like, hospitals often become incubators of infection, and infection control is a real challenge for many hospitals. So I think this makes perfect sense if it can be done.
And I suppose, especially with Omicron, given how much more infectious we know it is compared to other forms of this virus, I suppose hospital infection is a bigger concern than even previous iterations of this virus.
Well, a bit of the data that I'm really interested in, Tom, are those people who die with COVID or with Omicron, if you like, because it quite could be the fact that they die of something else, because they contract the new variant or COVID. Perhaps even while they're in hospital, they'll still be down as a COVID death. Now, is that necessarily what we really want to be seeing in the data? You have to dig a little bit beneath the data to see that. But if we can keep people out of hospital, keep people away from placing the strain on the NHS, I think that is the key to try and make sure that we don't have the more severe restrictions, including lockdown. And because it's the last thing that I want to see. And I think it's the last thing that most people want to see, especially with all the challenges relating to the economy.
Now, of course, I think I'm right in saying that death certificates record the primary cause of death rather than just whether it is with COVID or not. But those take several weeks to process, so the data really lags there. It makes it hard to make decisions. And talking about those decisions, the Cabinet meeting yesterday that stretched on for almost 3 hours and decided to not decide anything at this stage at all. Is that good governance?
Well, look, I think the arguments are finely balanced, and you've got to appreciate that ministers, in particular the Prime Minister, is receiving a whole host of analysis, worst-case scenarios, quite often from modellers, from SAGE and from others. But he's also facing relentless pressure from the media as well to try and do something, if you like. But quite often, doing nothing is sometimes the right decision, and trusting people to make their own decisions. I really hope, and we'll have to wait and see what the data suggests, but I really hope that Omicron is a milder form of disease. We won't see the hospitalisations that we've seen with other waves because of our vaccination programme, because of the booster. And so sometimes it is a watch and wait. And if we do end up with the kind of Christmas and the holiday period that we all want to see, it will be because people have held firm and not made those decisions to lock us down. Now, it could, as I say, it is a finely balanced argument, but I certainly come down on the watch and wait side.
Now, 100 of your colleagues rebelled against this government on the Plan B vaccine passport measures for large events and for nightclubs. Just how much larger would a rebellion be for more stringent restrictions? We've heard suggestions that indoor mixing may well be banned through January. Is that a realistic prospect, given the composition of the Conservative Party?
Look, there's no doubt this has been incredibly difficult for many of my colleagues. It was incredibly difficult for me, Tom, because I have been a COVID rebel in the past. I've rebelled on previous restrictions. Now, I didn't rebel this time because I thought what was proposed, it was quite limited. And if it meant that we could have the Christmas that we all want, I think it was worth doing. That combined with the booster campaign. But it will be very difficult for many colleagues, I dare say. So if there are to be further restrictions, that case has to be made very, very powerfully. The question that I have is, how can we prevent this being a yearly cycle? If we lock down, if we put stringent restrictions in place now because of the strain on the NHS, what are the guarantees this won't happen every year? We can't have a situation where every single year we're placing restrictions on the economy, we're potentially locking down because of this. We have to learn to live with COVID. That was a line that I heard very clearly from the Prime Minister, and it's something that I truly believe in too.
Well, Paul Bristow, thank you for that analysis. Let's hope that those stringent restrictions aren't brought forward, especially after Christmas, when, in my view, that would be less than effective, given that big mixing day will, of course, be this weekend. But for now, Paul Bristow, of course, MP for Peterborough and member of the Health and Social Care Committee, thank you for joining us on The Briefing this afternoon.
Thank you.
Now, Foreign Secretary Liz Truss hasn't been shy about her ambition, and now she's been giving the Brexit brief too. I'm talking to her former special advisor next about what that might mean. But first, here's the news.
Good afternoon, I'm Rosie Wright. Let's get you up to date. New COVID restrictions in England are unlikely to be introduced before Christmas, but the Prime Minister says the government won't rule out further action. Boris Johnson says the data is being monitored hourly and the arguments for stricter guidance are very finely balanced. In Wales, sporting events are going to be played behind closed doors from the 26th of December. Scotland's First Minister Nicola Sturgeon is going to give an update this afternoon following an increase in cases there. The World Health Organization is urging leaders and individuals to make difficult decisions now, declaring that 2022 must be the year the pandemic ends. The Director General is warning the Omicron variant is spreading significantly faster than the Delta strain. He has also urged caution over the festive period, saying an event cancelled is better than a life cancelled. Dubai's ruler has been ordered to pay £554 million to settle a custody battle with his ex-wife over their 2 children. It's the largest sum to ever be granted by a UK court in such a case. The High Court judge ruled the bulk of the payout is for the children's education and lifetime security and to address the grave risk posed to them by their father. Big Ben will finally chime on New Year's Eve with all of the famous faces clock tower on display for the first time in 4 years. The Elizabeth Tower and the bell mechanism have undergone the biggest restoration project in their 160-year history. The bell will be struck 12 times to mark the start of 2022 as the project to restore Westminster Elizabeth Tower nears an end. And some developing and breaking news for you. Ali Harbour Ali is charged with the murder of Conservative MP Sir David Amess. He has pled not guilty. We'll have more details for you at 1 o'clock. For now, though, you are up to date. I'll have more for you in half an hour.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Welcome back. Now, Liz Truss was appointed chief negotiator of the UK's future relationship with the EU this weekend, after Lord Frost resigned from the cabinet on Saturday over the political direction of this government. Truss's new role joins a long list of responsibilities. Alongside being Foreign Secretary, the Norfolk MP also holds the Women and Equalities brief. Today is her first test in the brand new role, as she's due to speak with her EU counterpart, Maros Sefcovic, the darling of the Tory grassroots, loyal to the Prime Minister, hard-working, boosterish and the youngest woman ever to be appointed to the cabinet. The new Foreign Secretary has truly built a strong brand over the last few years. But who is Liz Truss? Why was she given this Brexit brief? And why has Boris Johnson placed so much trust in her across so many briefs? Well, joining me now is someone who knows her very well. Kirsty Buchanan worked as a special advisor to Liz Truss at the Ministry of Justice and headed political press at number 10 Downing Street from 2017 to 19. Welcome to the programme. First of all, I suppose, this question of handling the Brexit aftermath, of handling the relationship with Northern Ireland. Is this a bit of a poisoned chalice?
Well, it's been said that it might be a poisoned chalice. I think one of the things the Prime Minister was very keen to signal both to the Brexiteers within his party, but also the Ulster Unionists, the DUP, was that whilst Lord Frost has gone, and he was known for being quite hardball in terms of his negotiating tactics, that it's going to be Lord Frost 2.0, if you like. Whilst Liz Truss campaigned for Remain in the referendum, she is very much a born-again Brexiteer. And Chris Heaton-Harris has also moved over, who is going to be the new Europe Minister, and he is a Brexiteer's Brexiteer. So I think the strategy will remain the same, that they will be negotiating on good faith in terms of the Northern Ireland Protocol, but that they will very much leave Article 16 on the table and they will trigger it if necessary.
In Brexit supporting corners, that the Foreign Office has always wanted to maintain more cordial relationships with the European Union than some on the Brexit right of the Conservative Party. Is there concern there that the institution of the Foreign Office might well tamper with a more hardline approach to negotiation?
Well, I've heard this too. I think it's a bit overstated, if I'm going to be honest. If you look at the appointments, they are very much designed to have the same signal of travel. And Lord Frost's resignation wasn't about the Northern Ireland Protocol, nor is it about this briefing that we've heard perhaps about a sort of softer line on it. It was very much about restrictions around COVID, and he's made that quite clear. So I think you can overstate this issue. I think if the mandarins at the Foreign Office try and capture Liz Truss, they might have a bit of a battle on their hands. She's every bit up to the challenge of waging culture war in the Foreign Office, and any idea that she's going to go native and come over all soft and cuddly when it comes to negotiations on Europe, I think is a little far-fetched.
No, it is interesting that Liz Truss has really won the respect of the Brexiteers within the Conservative Party. Of course, back during the time of the referendum, she campaigned for Remain, albeit so did Lord Frost. Lord Frost voted Remain as well. It's interesting that sometimes the born-again Brexiteers are the most fervent. Why do you think it is that Liz Truss has been able to become the darling of the Tory grassroots, being placed first in the monthly poll of Conservative Party members when it comes to who they believe the most effective, the best members of the cabinet are? How has she been able to top that time and time again?
Yeah, she's topped the Conservative home poll for a year now, and she's very much the darling of the grassroots. And I think this is a combination of, while she voted for Remain, it's very much a combination of her belief in Britain, her optimism for Britain, her desire to go out and fly the flag. She believes very much in the country. She believes in free trade. She has a very sort of boosterist kind of mentality. And I think that optimism is infectious. And I think we've had a very difficult year. And when she was International Trade Secretary, she routinely delivered deal after deal after deal. Now, cynics can snipe that these were effectively EU rollover deals, but it was a rare moment of optimism and upbeat flag flying for Britain across the global stage at a time when we were really feeling battered at home, and we needed some upbeat news. And I think it's that level of optimism, upbeat, wrapping yourself in the Union Jack, being unashamed, libertarian, that's what the grassroots love.
I wonder if it is that libertarian edge, that ideological purity almost, the willingness to speak up for free market economics, to defend the innovative companies that make our lives easier. I remember a speech that she gave not so long ago about sort of the young generation being the Deliveroo ordering, Uber riding sort of generation who live and breathe sort of innovative free market capitalism. Is this simply that she is one of the few people in cabinet who is actually making the case for markets at a time where it seems that the free market cause may well be in retreat?
Very much an unashamed capitalist who believes passionately in free markets. She believes passionately in low taxes. She is a conservative. She's a true blue, if you like. You combine that with a sort of infectious belief the greatest days of Britain lie ahead and not behind us. You combine it with the fact that she is not prepared to succumb to the woke crowd, even though she holds the equalities and women's brief. She's very kind of unwoke and very plain speaking. And she's got this sort of freedom-loving mentality. It's very infectious. It's very positive. And it's, in a post-Brexit global Britain, it's exactly what people, who bought into the Brexit project were told that they would get, which is a free trading global nation. Now, last week we secured a £10 billion deal with Australia. That's the first deal that we've secured that isn't, if you like, a rollover deal from the EU. Now, the groundwork for that was done by Liz Truss, and people rightly credit her with getting that to the line. Now, whilst obviously Anne-Marie Trevelyan, who's the new International Trade Secretary, has signed it off, all the heavy lifting on that was done by Liz Truss. And so when people say, well, she's not really delivered very much, she's not really been tested in cabinet, she has a proven track record on delivery. I saw that myself when I worked with.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. We seem to have lost out on the end of that conversation there. I thought it was a fascinating conversation, though, because, of course, Liz Truss is someone who tentatively put her toe in the ring for the leadership of the Conservative Party last time round. She didn't end up standing, but of course she had a photo shoot with, I think it was Vogue magazine, where she was sort of had Margaret Thatcher style hair, big pantsuits, was doing interviews with, I think, the Sunday Telegraph, saying about the number of departments of state she wanted to cut, the amount of government she wanted to reduce. I think it's a really interesting prospect that she is now being seen as one of those top contenders to take on the leadership next time. Could this be a potential return to ideology for a Tory party that has seen rather bereft of it in recent years? Well, that is all to come. And we'll no doubt be returning to these Tory leadership questions in the coming weeks and months. But a more immediate problem facing the country is, of course, the hospitality crisis that we've been seeing over the last few weeks. People not going out as much, bookings being cancelled. Our East of England reporter, Amelia Harper, has been looking into this issue.
The week before Christmas, a time when hospitality would make a quarter of its annual profits. Now, businesses are yet again preparing for another quiet festive period due to COVID-19. UK Hospitality warns as many as 10,000 sites could close if financial support isn't announced imminently. And the Prime Minister is still yet to decide whether to bring in more COVID restrictions. St Albans High Street, home to many pubs, bars and restaurants. Hospitality has been hit once again by the introduction of the new Omicron COVID variant. The sector normally relies on this time of year, but many places have seen a rise in cancellations and a lack of footfall through their venues. 50 metres in this direction is the White Swan, serving only drink. And 50 metres in this direction is the Peahen, serving both food and drink. So what's the situation for these two venues, just metres apart, off the same high street? Doors are open at the White Swan. It's a wet pub only and doesn't take bookings. Despite government messaging urging caution, it is still trading, but it's half of what it was before the pandemic.
Last night it was down 50%. I've been fortunate by staying in a wet situation pub, but for those that are going to try and recover and depend on the restaurant trade and the food trade, you know, I don't know how that's going to work for them. I can see closures here. You know, I've done my best to spend as much as I could to keep it afloat. I'm hoping my regulars will keep coming and it just carries on as a local.
On the other side of the high street, the Peahen is serving food. Normally tied up with bookings this close to Christmas, most have been cancelled.
It's really demoralising, actually. Going into Christmas, we were so excited. The team were buzzed. We were looking in for an amazing Christmas, and it started off so strong. And then we've just finished the last week now, and it's came in at about 33% below where we expected to be, which is quite a knock. Bookings-wise, in people and total guests, we've lost over 1,000 people in just over a week and a half.
For now, all these businesses can do is prepare their venue for those that do come in. Boris Johnson says further restrictions to tackle the spread of Omicron are possible. And if that happens, hospitality will want more support to make sure they can keep their lights on. Amelia Harper, GB News, Hertfordshire.
And of course, many hospitality firms asking for support despite no restrictions at all. A very concerning time for the industry. Thank you, Amelia, for that report. Well, 5 members of an organised criminal gang are due to be sentenced today for trying to smuggle 69 Albanians into the UK inside a converted fishing trawler. The vessel was intercepted by Border Force before the gang, all Eastern Europeans, could land the migrants at Great Yarmouth. The National Crime Agency says the conviction of the gang marks a major blow against the people smuggling operation, which planned to continue using the trawler to smuggle in at least 50 migrants every single week.
Tracked by a Coast Guard helicopter, this is the converted fishing trawler Svannik being buffeted by waves as it crossed the North Sea in November last year. But this boat's fishing days are long gone. Instead, packed into her hold are 69 Albanians being smuggled into the UK. The trawler never made it to its intended destination of Great Yarmouth. Intercepted by Border Force and the National Crime Agency, it was brought here to the port of Harwich. Some of the 69 migrants visible on the deck of the Svannik and on the dockside. The day before, she'd set off from Ostend in Belgium. These images, captured by one of the migrants on deck, shows just how rough the sea was during the 14-hour voyage. Authorities say those on board were in real danger. Most were below deck, but had the vessel encountered difficulties, there was only one lifeboat, which hadn't been serviced in years and was only capable of carrying 20 people. When they searched the boat, National Crime Agency officers found this laptop in the wheelhouse. It linked other organised criminal gang members to the people smuggling operation.
Police, can you open the door?
It's clear Lithuanian national Artūras Jusas wasn't expecting this early morning door knock at his South London home.
From the National Crime Agency. Yes. Okay.
I'm here this morning to arrest you, all right, for the offence of conspiring to facilitate illegal entry into the UK.
A search of his phone found various audio messages as Arturas Jusis set up this operation, promising to smuggle 50 migrants a week into the UK once they got enough money to buy and convert the boat.
We're going to bring you every week 50 people. Just we need to invest now 40,000 if you want, 20 you, 20 me. From first trip we're going to get that money back.
Juris and 4 other Eastern Europeans, all members of this organised crime group, have now been convicted and jailed for an operation the National Crime Agency said would have been highly lucrative for the gang. They charged their illegal passengers £15,000 each for the trip on this 60-year-old vessel. An inspection of the Svannik found she'd undergone a crude conversion to allow people to be carried in her hold. But conditions were filthy and cramped, and the fact there were only 20 life jackets on board showed how little regard the people smugglers had for the safety of their human cargo. Many thousands of people have arrived illegally into the UK this year on small boats across the English Channel. But while focus has understandably been on this growing crisis, organised criminal gangs have continued to expand their operations, looking for other routes into the UK. The commandeering of fishing boats like the Svannik to land migrants further up the coast and in rougher weather is now becoming increasingly common. Mark White, GB News.
And thank you, Mark, for that report. Really concerning imagery there. No doubt not the end of a very concerning story. Well, let's turn to your views on the politics of the day. Adrian says whether the Cabinet and the PM were right or wrong over this call is not the issue. The significance is the Cabinet is at last pushing back against COVID being the only consideration in policy formation. Nicola, however, believes in her area the transport is being reduced and this whole situation will affect the hospitality industry hugely. They're effectively now in lockdown mode about staffing. Barbara got in contact to say, my husband is one of those severely clinically vulnerable people, and yesterday an email arrived regarding new treatments. The NHS identified him as someone suitable for this because of his conditions should he test positive. I'm assuming this may be treatment at home. Very interesting there. Graham has said lockdown London for 2 weeks and close UK entry for anyone in this circuit breaker. I'm not sure how effective that would be given that the virus is all over the country now, but thank you very much for everyone who wrote in during the show. Really interesting thoughts there. You've been watching The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood. The show is back every weekday from 12 p.m. I'm also on at 9 a.m, so tune in for both. Thanks for watching.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello there and welcome to your Tuesday forecast. Here are your headlines. Generally a lot of cloud today, a few showers lurking across the far north of Scotland, but we will see some brighter moments. High pressure still in charge just for Tuesday before things become a bit more mobile from the west through Wednesday and into the Christmas weekend. And what that means, outbreaks of rain, but for today it is mostly dry. Now we will see some holes in the cloud. West Wales, western parts of Scotland seeing perhaps even some sunshine and some brighter moments coming through further east as the cloud overturns. A keen breeze towards the West Country as well as Northern Ireland. Temperatures here around 7 or 8, but struggling further east, 4 to 6 degrees Celsius. Now, through this evening and overnight, notice some cloud breaks towards the south, slowly moving their way northwards as well. So temperatures will plummet under starry skies, a fairly widespread frost away from Northern Ireland and the western periphery of Wales as well as the West Country. Temperatures holding up here and certainly through the latter part of the night, thickening cloud for Northern Ireland will bring with it the onset of some patchy rain. Elsewhere, despite the fact it will be a frosty start to the day, it will be bright. Some sunshine, the sunshine turning hazy through the day as that cloud slowly thickens from the west. And I notice this rain moves up towards western parts of Scotland through the afternoon and a wet day for Northern Ireland. Some showers then for the west of Wales through the latter part of the day. Elsewhere, it's a mostly dry end to Wednesday. Now through Wednesday evening and into the nighttime period, that rain continues its passage northwards. Hill snow will be an issue across the Scottish mountains, and you can see a few showers across the western side of Wales as well as England. Temperatures holding up, perhaps some pockets